tissue probably. yeah. That's nice. Easy. Poor Lori, just a little way down.
Feeling that?
You should be all right. Here. Why is this so screwed up for you?
Oh, okay, is that true?
Oh, never mind. That's right. That's right. No. As I did. Well, no one knows anything. I'm going to keep that.
Oh.
Well, don't go in here. To the left.
Oh, that's what's in the stairwell.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Those are great.
I'm not sure what I want to say.
We're sitting in the third row.
In the second row.
As you present right here, right?
On the bench.
Well, don't you sit there?
Where are you actually? Where's the podium? Oh, there it is. It's clear. Or right there. Sit down. I just want to sit
No, that's right.
Okay, if I bring it right here?
Oh, yes.
PowerPoints are all up here, but yeah, we can get that started. We don't have a definition. Okay. Not that I can find at least. I mean, it may be on there. I think, yeah, but
Yes.
otherwise I'm recommending the shot. So. It's okay.
Well, good evening. It was a very good meal, wasn't it? And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, you chose the better part. So thank you for coming. It's a friendly atmosphere. Some very fascinating dissertations. My name is Karen Longman. I have taught in the doctoral programs here for about 10 years and have the privilege of chairing some of the students that are presenting tonight and bringing to the program. So, being here, our research that's being presented in this room is qualitative research. And our first presenter, Steve Fisher, you may have noticed up on the screens, he is from Kentucky, has been the president of Oakland Christian Academy for the past 16 years, and prior to that worked for about 10 years in higher education, and has a desire to be academic ed as a bridge person between K through 12 and higher education. Dan has his own board, so board of directors at his institution, has been interested in board governance for quite a long time. And as you can see on the screen, has chosen the topic anchors of engagement, factors leading to exemplary engagement among alumni board members. This is the Council for Christian College and Universities, about 100 institutions around America. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. He has 7 minutes and some time. He will be. I'm very proud of his work, and I think you'll be fascinated by it.
All right, can you hear me okay? All right. Christian colleges and universities need experienced, well-informed, and active board members with exemplary engagement. It's become difficult, however, to attract and retain board members who give sacrificially, prepare thoroughly for meetings, and advocate enthusiastically and care deeply for the institution. My research question was, what are the factors that lead non-alumni board members from Council for Christian Colleges and Universities institutions to achieve exemplary engagement in their board service? Using a grounded theory approach, I interviewed 12 non-alumni board members from CCCU institutions to explore the factors leading to their exemplary engagement. I interviewed each participant twice over the course of 2 years, and I selected non-alumni board members because I wanted to examine engagement outside of positive alumni experiences. The theories of organizational identification, psychological ownership, and organizational commitment seem to provide relevant lenses through which I could examine exemplary engagement, and they have been found to be linked to organizational citizenship behavior, which is a construct similar to exemplary engagement. Hence, they provided a theoretical basis for this inquiry. What I found was that participants described categories of experiences which I called anchors of engagement, the positive experiences that participants described as meaningful to their sense of connectedness to the institution. There were three themes that encompass these anchors of engagement: identity and resonance. They identified with the institution and had a sense that their board involvement made good use of their strengths, potential, faith, experience, and values. A compelling investment. They had an awareness of and an appreciation for the institution and its mission and people, making it worthy of their investment of time, energy, and resources. And a life enriched. Their efforts and service made a difference and contributed to the success of the institution. The experience of board service had broadened their perspectives, changed their ways of thinking, and helped them grow in profound ways. Evidence of participants experiencing organization identification, psychological ownership, organizational commitment were found in each of the major themes. My theoretical model suggests that a life enriched is an expansion and enlargement of the themes identity and resonance and a compelling investment. The theoretical model shows that the board member, upon joining the board and as time passed, had identity and resonance and a compelling investment, anchors of engagement. Participants experienced identity and resonance and a compelling investment. As time passed, experiences from these two themes were expanded and enlarged to create a third theme. This third and seemingly more powerful theme emerged as a life enriched. The anchors of engagement are encompassed within these three themes and led to exemplary engagement. A key finding as expressed by this model is that reaching a life enriched must begin with strong, significant anchors of engagement in identity and resonance and a compelling investment. Indeed, there's not a path to a life enriched without first experiencing the first two themes. I'll focus briefly on the development of a life enriched and how it is an outgrowth of the first two themes. Thomas was a wordsmith and believed himself to be uniquely equipped to think about mission and vision. He was assigned to a committee to rewrite the college's vision and mission statements, and seeing this alignment between his gifts and the needs of the board gave him identity and resonance. On that committee, he used his influence to press for what he believed was the right outcome. He said, "I've been put in this place for a reason. There's something I have to offer. Even if it's just my voice saying, let's don't settle for the party line, let's wrestle with how to do this right." This opportunity to have influence showed an experience of a life enriched. David had a deep appreciation for the faith tenets and the outreach of the institution, which was a compelling investment experience. An attorney, David thought himself as being only a functional resource to the board and was surprised to find himself grappling with big issues he otherwise never would have faced. He said, "It's opened my eyes to a lot of things. It's given more depth to my walk with Christ, the ability to question things, to not accept the way things have always been done." Being challenged spiritually and intellectually gave David a life-enriched experience. In order to attain a life enriched in the experience of board members, the presidents and board chairs should consider a number of recommendations. Here are two of them. Give committee assignments and responsibilities that take into account board members' skill sets, strengths, and gifting. This will lead them to see how their contributions of time and talent result in change, that they make a difference and have influence. Expose board members to rigorous discussion and learning opportunities, life-enhancing experiences. This will lead board members to have a sense of their lives being changed through their board service and their horizons expanded. This study found evidence of organizational identification, psychological ownership, and organizational commitment in the experiences of non-alumni board members from CCCU institutions, and showed how these experiences, or anchors of engagement, combine to create board service as a life-enriching experience, resulting in exemplary engagement. I want to take a moment to thank my dissertation committee, Dr. Karen Longman, Dr. Alex Jun, Dr. Rebecca Birch-Basinger. Thank you for your investment in me and this research. I want to thank my wonderful family and faithful friends for their abundance of encouragement and support throughout these past 8 years. And I want to express my appreciation to the amazing board and staff of Oakdale Christian Academy for all the ways that they helped make this possible. Thank you.
So we have a little bit more flexibility in this room because we have 3 presenters before. And if you follow this, Dan was interested in the best of the best board members. How did they get to the point where they had not even graduated from the institution serving? Yet he asked the president of the meeting about your criteria. You could have 100 board members like this board member. How did they get from not attending to being an exemplary board member? So let's open it up for a few questions and see who has thoughts that wish I didn't even mention this year.
This person, are you from Oakdale?
Oakdale, Kentucky.
What were your criteria for selection of participants?
They needed to be people who had been board non-alumni, had served on the board for a minimum of, we have kind of a range, but minimum really of 3 to 5 years. And those who they really did consider, gave, according to their resources, abundantly and generously, people who were very committed, people they knew they could count on to really care about the institution, just people who loved the institution.
Yeah, I know that you had to come into this with studying your own bias aside, but during the course of your research, what was the most surprising thing that you learned as it relates to you?
One of the things that was just so surprising was to see, there were some things that were kind of intuitive, and it wasn't a real surprise that there was a compelling investment or the identity and resonance were significant, but it was a surprise to see, and further reflection personally really confirmed it, that people who didn't have those things and didn't have the experiences that brought them to the life enriched, there was just really no chance they were really going to become the kind of board member. That's the kind of thing that reflecting on my own experience that I had seen, and confirmed that, and challenged me to really work on those kinds of recommendations that I'm making. So
we'll get Ann Elizabeth up, and I'll ask the last one. Board, and Becky has a board member here. So I'm curious how your board has changed because of the research.
Being more intentional, and also, there can be a tendency to look for board members, someone who just, someone knows someone who's got a lot of money or something. Well, if they don't have the kinds of things, if they're not going to be in sync with the organization, with the identity and resonance, or if they don't already come in, or if they don't have a way to nurture this feeling of seeing the institution as very compelling, it's going to be a dead end. It's not going to be something. So it really has kind of refined our search on board members as far as my part of it.
Breathe a sigh of we're going to double check with board members. I just want to say, working with Dan and Elizabeth, Lisa, those I will be introducing this evening, it's just been a great joy to sense the responsiveness and their desire to do really good work in a dissertation that makes an experience. So our next presenter, Ann Elizabeth Powell, has worked for many years at the Ryan Library at Point Loma as Reed at San Diego. And some of our students begin a dissertation journey out of intellectual curiosity. They may read something, they may take a course, and as we talk about the bubble of knowledge that's out there, how can I push out some dimension that explore and contribute to the research and to the literature? But I think began this journey, as she will explain, out of the original read. I don't want to steal her thunder, but you're going to see passion. I also just want to thank Alex Jomery, and the third member at the University of Nebraska, who's probably one of the experts in the country. So Elizabeth, tell us why you've been into this.
Sure. Why will come be?
Okay.
Not to give it away, if you don't know. So, as you can see from my title slide, my dissertation focused on college experiences of transracially adopted individuals. My research question addresses basically, it gives the parameters of the study as well as some of the demographic information about my participants. I'm going to talk later about my methodology, but as you've already heard, it's a qualitative study. At this point, you may be asking yourself why this subject is important enough to study. This is a small population of people in the college. There are several reasons I chose to explore this topic. First, as the slide explains, transracially adopted individuals may experience challenges not common to the majority population. These challenges may include issues of self-esteem, behavioral problems, underachievement in school, depression, and even increased rates of suicide. It is important to understand the development of transracially adopted persons in order to provide the necessary supports. In order to explore this topic, I chose to conduct a qualitative study. There are many reasons for this, but the primary reason is that I tend to view the world through story. I comprehend the world in this way, so I chose to conduct a study that would allow me to better understand the topic by hearing the voices of the people experiencing life as transracial adoptees. For this study, I conducted interviews with 5 participants. Participants were chosen based on several specific criteria. They were Black or biracial, they're between the ages of 18 and 25, they were adopted domestically by white parents, and they were currently enrolled in college at either the junior or senior level. I used a narrative inquiry methodology in which I conducted a series of 3 interviews with each participant. From the more than 35 hours of interviews I conducted with the 5 participants, 3 principal themes emerged. Themes were identified through multiple readings and coding of the interview transcripts. These themes, shown here, difference, racism, and resilience, and each of the themes was then subdivided into 3 sub-themes. The first theme, difference, was divided into the sub-themes you see here. The term difference describes both the ways in which the participants perceive themselves to be viewed by others and their perceptions of the dissimilarities between their family composition and that of other families. With regard to the sub-theme fitting in, each of the participants recounted a moment in their lives when they realized that they did not share certain characteristics with their adopted families. They also felt that they were treated differently by society at large, which contributed to feelings of either fitting in with others or not fitting in. Navigating Black societal norms represents statements participants made with regard to the ability to negotiate settings and situations in which they found themselves to be among other African Americans. And lastly, the common experiences sub-theme was identified through participant statements of feeling that they did not share or understand experiences that are common to other persons of color. The racism theme derives from participant comments with regard to situations or experiences where they felt that they were treated differently because of their skin color. Racist encounters, these are the stories participants told with regard to incidents in their lives where they were treated negatively because of their race. Colorblindness parental education describes participants' statements about how they were raised and how their parents tended to be raised. And lack of parental knowledge about race often led to the last of the sub-themes under racism. Each of the participants expressed in some way feeling that their parents could have done a more thorough job to prepare them for a racialized society, which left them vulnerable to racist encounters for which other persons of color have developed coping skills. The final theme is resilience, which is basically your ability to bounce back from negative events. Every one of the 5 participants in my study had faced extraordinary circumstances that might have overwhelmed other people. Yet all were essentially happy, high achievers, most of whom had not experienced behavioral issues. The ways in which they coped with trying events comprise the sub-themes shown. Participants found support through the connectedness of student groups, college courses, roommates, and developing groups. Which brings me to the second sub-theme, faith. All 5 participants identified as Christians and all took part in some kind of worship. Finally, all 5 were currently working with a counselor or seeking a counselor at the time of our interviews. They each had come to realize that they needed support in order to continue with personal development and found that support through their college wellness centers. So, did college have anything to do with the racial identity development of these people? It sure did. Each one of them specifically stated that they knew nothing about themselves racially until they came to college. But what, going back to my original research question, were the lived experiences in college that affected the racial identity development of the 5 participants in the study? 4 supports or experiences listed on this slide were mentioned by the students as having the most impact on how they negotiated race and how they saw themselves with regard to their race. 3 of the participants had gone on study abroad trips. They connected more deeply with their own race and saw different ways of relating to others based on their time abroad. Diversity or ethnic studies courses were important to 3 of the participants. Mentors were extremely important to each of the participants. These mentors helped the participants to learn some of the Black societal norms they felt they had not previously understood, gave them clues on how to interact with a racialized society, and provided support through the learning process. And finally, as previously discussed, each of the participants was either currently seeing a therapist or was seeking one at the time of our interviews. Obviously, with the variety of themes and findings of my study come a wealth of implications for practitioners of higher education. However, due to time constraints, I will focus on just one. Because counseling was seen by every participant in the study as being beneficial, this is the recommendation on which I'm going to focus. Counselors and or wellness center staff would do well to become familiar with adoption-related issues. You don't have to go and get another degree to do this. Talk to someone who understands adoption issues. Attend a forum or read some articles about counseling for adoptees. When I get back to my campus in September, I have an appointment with our Wellness Center Director and Chief Clinician so that we can go over some of this for us to help our students. And so finally, this is why I did this. This is my kid. This is Cameron. I'm a Mahl baby, so just bear with me. If you've been asking yourself how I arrived at this topic for the dissertation, now you have the answer. Tamara is 14, and I have had the privilege of being her mother since she was 6 months old. What I've learned in that time is how much I have to learn. It's a big job to be a mom, especially to someone who doesn't share your color. And I want for our colleges and universities to be ready for her when she arrives, to be ready for all the others who are to be exploring what it means to be Black in the United States and what it means to be Black having been raised by a white family. She is the first of my thank yous. I also want to thank my committees, Drs. Conlon, Alex Jung, and John Rabel, who's from the University of Nebraska. It's my subject, content. It took me a long time to do this. I'm cohort 2007, 10 years. You can do it. They stuck with me, they encouraged me, and kicked my rear end through the whole arduous process. Thank you to my APU cohort. I couldn't have dreamed of what each of you would have meant to me when we sat at Sarah Retreat Center that first day. Thank you to Karen Bowden, wherever you are. I simply would not have finished without you. So much of getting here is because of your friendship. Lisa Sparks, who's going to follow me. We did it, and we did it together. We're finishing together. I love you, my friend. And my family who are here, they supported me every step of the way. They gave me space to write, took my kiddo for days at a time, gave me feedback, and never let me quit. I love you very, very much. And finally, my best friend and roommate, Phyllis Fox. If I earned the letters Ph.D., she earned the spaces and the periods between. She read and reread my drafts, she proofed, she transcribed, she took me hither and yon, she listened to hours of interview, and she listened to me whine and cry and shout with joy. Thank you.
Encouraging to see the work that these doctors do. So Dan had an intellectual curiosity and a professional curiosity and a professional curiosity. And I bet some of you have questions. Hopefully. Do you want some questions? Kathy.
They talked about why that was so, and
There's a thing that happens in transracially adopted families. where it's easier to pretend that your child is white and to raise that child as a white child. And in the case of almost every one of my participants, only one of them did, they grew up in very small white towns. One participant was literally, she was one of 6 Black people at her high school, and they were all also transracially adopted. So, for instance, her mom sent them to a Baptist church. It wasn't a Black church, but she associated Baptist with Black, and so she sent them, and she didn't go to church with the kid. So it was kind of, here you go, I hope you get something from it. And this is not to say that these parents were doing anything wrong per se, but what you need to know when you come into this is that you get to teach your child these things. And what a Black parent will teach a Black child is how to deal with microaggressions and how to anticipate racism. And when you're white, you don't do that. So for me, the first time my child experienced racism, she was 6. I was completely unprepared. It took 3 weeks for her to admit what had happened. And I was already on the other side of the curve, right? So I had to learn how to help her to deal with racism. Just sort of anticipate that. It's not that you make your child, everybody hates me, but you do want to help your child to understand how the world works. So I hope that answers that. Sorry, it was long. Okay, so this is my aunt Linda. I'm going to ask whether it's your I'm going to reference my family.
Help your body. Or how should people help them?
The first thing you want to do is called racial socialization. So what you need to really be doing is finding yourself a community of people. We intentionally bought our house in an integrated neighborhood. So the people that she sees every day are of many colors. The schools that she attends are very racially diverse. So her group of friends tend to be Black. And I was super proud the other day when we dropped her off at surf camp, which is in San Diego, and pretty much all white people, and 2 or 3 Black girls went by, and she goes, well, those are going to be my friends. And I said, oh, you know them from previous years? And she goes, no, it just kind of makes sense. And I was like, bingo, yes, it does. I love that. And that sounds weird, right? But it means that inside, in her core, she understands that she's a Black person. And she values that. And that made me hugely happy. Somebody else might have said, oh, that's weird. But for me, it was a moment.
What of the importance of counseling? Were the counselors all Black as well?
They were wellness center counselors. I don't believe any of them. They were the people who they connected with at college. So, and I wanted to say this, but I didn't have enough time. That should not be construed that they were maladjusted in any way. They saw a need for further development and went and sought out a support that would give that to them. So, and they were all seeing counselors through their wellness centers. So that's why I went back and said, okay, the first thing I can do is go to our wellness center and say, hey, look, guess what? They're waiting for you. It does not. Yeah. And someone who understands adoption issues. And that's not just for transracial adoptees, that's for adoptees in general. There are certain issues that come with being adopted. And if a counselor understands those things, they can help with the progression. It's exponential. Just sort of understanding the feelings that they don't know how to process. Thank you. Thank you.
If I'm remembering one piece of Elizabeth's story, you know, the years 18 to 22 are called the critical years in terms of identity formation, helping students figure out who they are being. And if I'm remembering the story right, one of your participants talked about as a young Black man walking into a fraternity, giving another student a fist bump, and the student said, "You're adopted, aren't you?" Because he had been growing up in a white culture, and the Black student, the way he gave the fist bump, he said, "You were adopted, aren't you?" Isn't that amazing? Subtle things. So, as Anne Elizabeth said, we're in the 10th year of the program, and we have some students that push to the finish line. Lisa is here as a show of force. So I just, I actually wore this pin because if you chair dissertations, these are like, let's get these people thrown up and out the door. So here's my Guatemalan doll saying, congratulations. So Lisa has a background in health, public health and in sciences, and has taught at Cal State Long Beach since 1999. Came into our programs faculty members also research at Long Beach, and I misspoke because she actually did a quantitative study, so she's using the numbers, and Dr. Schreiner was her methodologist, and a very interesting study as well on how mentoring shapes students thrive during their college years. So Lisa, you will give a little bit of background on how you got into this,
Yes.
and then explain what your curiosity was and what you found.
Okay, so the title of my study was Mentoring as a Predictor of Student Success Among First Generation and Continuing Generation Students at a four-year public university. So the reason why I actually did this study was because I have been personally mentored, and actually he's sitting here, but also there was a past graduate of ours she graduated in 2008. She was a first generation Filipino student. And she actually did not have any family or financial support in her academic success. However, she was enrolled in a formal mentoring program at our university, which really assisted in, because I talked to her and I asked her, well, how did you get through this? And it was through this mentoring program and having this mentor. So because of my personal experience and then dealing with this other student is why I focused on this. So why I wanted to study this is to find out how I and others can be better mentors in getting students to getting them academically successful. Okay, so now why focus on this? Well, within our nation, generally the population is changing. We're extremely diverse, as is the population of post-secondary education. We're seeing an increased number of a diverse student population. There was a study that was, or a report by the UCLA that stated that in 1971, 90% of the incoming freshmen self-reported as white. In 2015, that number dropped to 50%. So it really showed how much our student population was changing within colleges and universities. So really had to focus on now how do we deal with this new set of students, because they're much more diverse than they had been in the past. Secondly, there's high rates of attrition. We've seen this in all of our studies, and with Tinto and talking about the problem with student attrition and retention. So we're focusing on trying to improve those retention rates. However, those retention rates are actually much higher among our minority and first generation student population. And the reason being is because they lack social and cultural capital. So my research questions. There has been considerable research on mentoring. It's pretty broad though. So it has been conducted that there's a lack of clarity about what dimensions of mentoring contribute to student success. Sorry. Therefore, the purpose of the study was to identify which aspects of mentoring contributed to my 3 student success outcomes, which were intent to graduate, college GPA, and levels of thriving. So I conducted a quantitative study. It was a paper pencil survey, so there's a lot of data entry because I was not able to use an online survey. But I collected from 416 students that were enrolled in a face-to-face upper division human sexuality and sex education course. It was, so the survey itself included the college student mentoring scale, the thriving quotient, and then campus experiences and student demographics. It was a hierarchical multiple regression analysis. Okay, so my key findings. This was a pretty big study. There was a lot of scales and a lot of constructs that I was focusing on. So this was a pretty big area for me. But the key findings for all college students was that psychological and emotional support, which is the PES, and the ASKS is academic and subject knowledge support. Those were the two key mentoring scales that really contributed to student success, more specifically within the thriving levels. It really helped with the existence of a role model, such as a faculty member or peer who offers value support. It came out that it can motivate students to invest in the academic and learning process, as well as provides for support and personal growth and development. My second part of the findings was focused on the first generation student population. Somewhat similar to the continuing generation and my sample overall, psychological and emotional support was a contributing factor, but also it was existence of a role model as opposed to the academic subject knowledge support. Having a role model is a means by which first generation students establish new supportive relationships that provide them with the opportunity to interact with persons that are different than themselves and provide them with much needed support to overcome challenges of barriers that they often encounter. Another part of this was that being a first generation Asian Pacific Islander student was a negative predictor for all levels of all the thriving levels. And this was a big surprise for me. And because I'm short on time, if you have a question about it, I will let you ask me that. And implications for practice. So in order to serve this increasingly diverse student population effectively, educational leaders and practitioners must continue to develop strategies that provide students with equal opportunities in accessing and receiving their education. By knowing the specific components of mentoring that contribute most to student success, higher education practitioners can design mentoring programs that emphasize on those particular aspects, which can then change the way mentoring programs are designed. So 3 specific research-based implications for practice are building the capacity of faculty to be more effective mentors, expand opportunities for students to interact with faculty, and developing living learning type communities for both residential and commuter type students. And now, probably the hardest part of this presentation for me, because I'm an awful emotional speaker, so I'm keeping this super short. Whatever Anna Elizabeth had said about her friends and family, ditto. Because I will get all teary-eyed. My kids are sitting up here and they've been so patient. They're toddlers, they've been so patient and so bored. But as far as my inspiration to finish and be a role model, it's my family and friends that are sitting here, my mentor, and yeah, it's tough. And family that could not be here. My grandfather is a big inspiration to me. My dissertation degree is actually dedicated to him. And my husband, who has not divorced me through this process. For the last 9 months, because I'm at the end of my line and it's do or die. So he has been super patient with me, and my family has been watching my kids. Stop eating. Who watched my kids when I had to study and I had to take time away. So now I get guilt-free time with my family. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you to my family and friends, and Anna Elizabeth. Thanks for the screaming moments.
Okay, she already teed up one question. So or anything you'd be interested in knowing. Mentoring, is this your mentor?
This is my mentor, Dr. Mahl, since 1999. He has been my mentor.
Lisa has been talking about you for 10 years. Yeah. The power of thanking people. Okay, well, we've called on you twice. Just a second. Okay.
My question is, for example, from a class, so what kind of freshman is I would imagine that was for the higher moment of intervention?
Yeah, so that was actually my example was my biggest limitation. I originally started off wanting to collect data from the formal mentoring program. However, due to changes in the program and changes with administration, it wasn't possible for me to do that. And so I kind of grabbed, again, I'm at the end of my life, I grabbed what was most convenient for me and which I would get the biggest sample out of because I do teach in that department. And so that really was my biggest limitation because within the study, intent to graduate in college GPA, but midterm was not a predictor at all. And again, my study may have been very different if I was looking at freshmen and sophomores where that we're having the biggest retention problem there. So that's my question.
How would you practically help freshmen with what you learned?
So with my third implication for practice in developing these living learning communities, I work at a commuter institution, and so because we don't necessarily have that a lot of the students in living residential life, that creating some of these programs that can meet the needs of those that are commuters, but kind of looking at the living learning community model.
So I want to apologize for not squelch intellectual curiosity. So I think we should. What would you like to know? Here is the resident expert on all things elementary.
API is Asian Pacific Islanders. Yes, I'm so sorry. I know we should not be using acronyms.
So what did you think made that?
So with so this was really one of the most interesting findings in my study because all of the literature really focuses on the Latino population and how the retention rates are so much lower for the Latino and minority population, but really focusing on Latino. And so I guess I was kind of biased when I was doing my initial lit review, and I was kind of leaning towards that way because we very rarely hear, well, Asian students are so successful, right? But the thing is that there are really two different. Going in and looking at more of the literature after looking at my findings, that there are two different types of Asian Pacific Islanders. As far as immigration goes, there are those that immigrated here willingly, and then those that immigrated here as refugees. And so it's that population of the refugees. So it's your Southeast Asian population, which are like your Cambodian, your Laotian, the Hmong community. It's where we see higher rates of first generations, and they have a lot of similarities as the Latino population as far as first generation goes. And so they may not necessarily have that social and cultural capital that other students have because the parents or their family members don't understand how to navigate through college, and on top of that, they may have some different expectations of once they're in the United States, what they need to do. College may not necessarily be great. Yeah, that was really interesting for me. Once I got into the Southeast Asian literature, there's a lot of relatively new qualitative research on this the Southeast Asian population.
Okay, well, there's very interesting research coming out of our department as well on what it means to private students based on, are they Asian American, are they African American, quite different applications. That's part of it. So, I also just want to thank, as we mentioned, Honorable for Elizabeth. Each committee has 3 people and chair who navigates and directs the process of methodologists to make sure that they respect subjects and are using a robust methodology and a content expert. So this is content experts. Or Pepperdine, who's also a graduate of the program. We're going to take about 10 minutes here and have a break, and we can head upstairs. And then this would be the place you'll shift, and in this room, more qualitative dissertations after the break. So come back from morning lecture.
Our hope is that the next session will start at 8, so that's in 10 minutes.
starting the program, you had twins. Yeah. So I think we'll probably see some pictures of them, but I think he has chosen a very fascinating topic for his dissertation research, which is when a faculty collectively is unhappy with administrative leadership, they can call for a no confidence vote and send a collective signal that they are not happy with the way an institution is being led. And Aaron has interviewed people who have not only navigated a no confidence vote, which usually leads the president to go, but actually they have stayed on a successful presidency somewhere else. And the curiosity is, how did they do that? So, Aaron, welcome.
Well, thank you. As Karen said, my dissertation sought to understand the lived experiences of executive college leaders who received a vote of no confidence from their faculty. You know, higher education is in a pretty interesting place right now. Some would say it's more complex than ever. There's increased financial pressures for colleges and universities. There's increased scrutiny from the public. And some are even calling, some are even struggling with the value of higher education. Is the higher education investment worth it? One of the things I think is interesting is if you look at the number of no confidence votes over the last 15 years, you can see that between 2010 and 2016, there were 75 documented, not necessarily all of them, 75 documented votes of no confidence. In the 10 years prior, there were only 47. That's a large increase. I'm not even a quantitative researcher. You can see that votes of no confidence include all different types of institutions, community colleges, public, private institutions. And one would argue that with all the increased scrutiny in higher education, all the pressures facing leaders, shared governance, a really great thing when it works, but can also be somewhat challenging. And those pressures bearing down on the board, on the administrators, on the faculty, could possibly be the reasons these no confidence votes are increasing. So my question was, how do executive college leaders successfully navigate receiving a no confidence vote from their faculty? How do they make the experience? The research on this topic is none. There's nothing except for this. So it's pretty exciting to think about. But this is a broad topic. So what I was most interested in studying was the individuals who received these votes of no confidence. And so I just decided to do a phenomenological approach. The shared phenomenon was receiving the vote of no confidence and successfully navigating that. I'll talk about that in a moment. And because I'm interpreting the phenomenon through my lens, I would take the hermeneutic approach. If you're interested in more about this, you can read chapter 3. The participants in that study all were higher education senior level administrators, all white males with 20+ years of higher education experience. All received a vote of no confidence. 2 of those who received the vote of no confidence left within a few months of receiving the vote because of the vote. So they had to go to a different campus, get a different job. 2 actually remained in their positions. So a pretty interesting segmentation there. I purposefully sampled individuals who successfully navigated the vote. So some researchers have called the vote of no confidence the death knell. So when you have received a vote, it could be the very thing that ends your career in the academy. So I wanted to study the individuals who maybe received the vote but still were working. So I used the term successful navigation. I unsuccessfully attempted snowball sampling, which is asking those individuals, do you know anyone else who got a vote? Do you want to talk to me? So I had 4 participants in all, 2 rounds of interviews. The first round I was around 90 minutes. The second round was about 60 minutes. So findings and analysis. If I were to summarize my dissertation in the topic, I would say this was an experience of pain and suffering. In some ways, it's maybe not any different from other pain and suffering, but I think this was unique to my participants. One participant said it was worse than the death of my father. The second participant said it was the greatest challenge of my Christian faith. The third participant, awkward and extremely painful. One participant who lost his job but stayed on the same campus for about 4 or 5 months talked about the difference from before he received the vote, on campus a lot, seen a lot in the cafeteria, faculty, staff, and students. This experience after the vote. The thing I did most often was at lunchtime. I drove down to the McDonald's, I went to the drive-thru, got a cheeseburger. I got the Happy Meal. I gave the toy away to some kid and I ate it on the truck. I did that for 4 months at least, Happy Meals in the truck. Pretty impactful quote, probably the quote that will stick with me long after today about his experience. But there were some findings and themes, and 2 broad themes. The first theme was framing, which is maybe how participants chose to view the experience. What helped them view this experience in a productive way was their faith in God, and also, interestingly enough, a strong confidence in themselves, in their decisions of leadership. Not a single participant would go back on the decision they made, even though that decision cost them a job. relates to some literature on self-authorship. Second major theme was reframing their perspective. Spousal support yet also challenge was interesting. It wasn't just cheerleading from the spouse, but often the questions and the challenge that the spouse offered was helpful in them reframing their perspective. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I think the theme I'm going to focus on most is the separation of role and identity. These men had made their jobs, in many ways, their identity. So a vote against them as their roles, a vote against them as a person. So let's talk quickly about reframing their perspective. Reframing is a strategy that helps adults cope with transition, helps cognitively neutralize the threat of a situation, and understand and experience through a more constructive lens. We've all probably done this in our lives, whether we know it or not. These men were masters at reframing their perspective. Examples, I remember thinking 60-40 is a whole lot better than 100-0. True, right? Smart guys, presidents. It was a faculty meeting in which 25% of the faculty weren't even there, and some of them had to for the meeting concluded. Again, reframing this vote of no confidence, this crucible moment in their leadership, it's pretty interesting. The role separation piece was interesting too. I talked about how these individuals really had seen their career almost begin to define them. The top quote says, I began looking for other jobs and I couldn't find them. I mean, I came closest to getting a job at Walmart. I tried to explore the possibility of opening a business. I tried to get some jobs in construction. My identity was attached directly, inescapably to my career. As far as I could tell, there was no way to separate it. Last quote, over-identify that it's my job and my income and my status that leads to a grief that becomes unsolvable or a grief that's hard to get over. These men, in order to navigate and make this experience, had to separate their identity from their roles. So, is this significant at all? First of all, does the findings do align with and corroborate earlier research on human development and human transitions theories? And it fills a void in research related to vote of confidence and connects these findings to previous research. I think also this study demonstrates how individuals successfully navigated and persevered while making meaning from their experience through the framing, their faith in God, confidence in themselves, and then reframing through goal separation and spousal support. There were multiple implications for the study. For practice, I think the two that I'll leave you with were human resource personnel should think actively about how to provide resources for those who are going through a role transition anytime, specifically with violence. And then for boards of trustees and regents, consider having a documented mediation plan that maybe can fend off some of these conflicts. Now the fun part. First, I'd like to thank the faculty of APU's doctoral program, some of whom are in this room. The doctoral experience at APU has been transformative for me in large part due to you. In every interaction, you challenge me to be a better leader, colleague, scholar, friend, and one who does justice, loves mercy, and walks in. Thank you for modeling those behaviors and how you live and serve. To my dissertation advisor, Dr. Karen Longman, you never stop believing in me, as evidenced by the countless edits to my writing and constructive feedback throughout the dissertation process. Your standard of excellence spans your personal, professional, and spiritual life. I am grateful for the maximizing role you've played and continue to play in my life. Thank you. To my methodologist, Dr. Island, I hope you're watching online. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from you over the last 6 years. You are a great scholar. Your curiosity without agenda has always challenged me. You had unwavering confidence in me and the relevance of this topic that helped motivate me to finish the task, despite countless doubts that I couldn't. Thank you for modeling scholarship, humility, and grace while never taking yourself too seriously. I'd also like to acknowledge the 2010 APU cohort. A lot younger back then. I've always learned best in community, and I cannot imagine a better group of people to learn with and learn from. Membership in this cohort is a privilege. That's been one of the joys of it. This journey could also not have been accomplished without the prayer and support from many family and friends, some of whom are here today or watching online. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, Mark and Pam Adams, my brother-in-law and sister, Steve. Thank you for your prayers and for always asking. To my parents, Bob and Jean Mahl, you were my first teachers. Your prayer for me, not just throughout this journey, but throughout my entire life, is one of the greatest and most consequential investments in me. I remain challenged by your love for God, who is the true source of knowledge. Thank you for supporting my academic pursuits. You always encourage me. To my children, Caleb and Clara, happy birthday. You entered the world in the final days of my first year of doctoral work. To say you changed my life and my ability to accomplish doctoral work. That would be a big understatement. But your lives have changed. Your curiosity, love of learning, and unconditional love for me continually challenge me to be a better person. You have sacrificed time with Dad on many weekends so I could finish this dissertation. Please know I finished this dissertation. You will no doubt experience times in your lives when you doubt your ability to persist and persevere at a certain part of growing up. My prayer is that my completion of this degree will remind you that God calls you to a task. He equips you to complete. And you'll always be lifelong learners who love and serve God. And finally, to my wife, Teresa, you have walked with me every step of this process. You have sacrificed the most in this journey, and I am humbled by your selflessness and the joy with which you have sacrificed. Although I frequently doubted and questioned whether this vow still is possible, I never did. I am indebted to you for your love, support, and unwavering belief. You are my biggest fan. It is with profound inadequacy I say thank you for all you do. Now let's go take a picture.
Alrighty, that undoubtedly generated a few questions. Let's take two. Cindy.
What motivated you or inspired you in this study?
So I was working on a campus where a good friend of mine received a vote of no confidence, and within a day or so of the vote, I went online to find some research about how could I find something that might help this gentleman navigate this. I found nothing. And in that moment, I think the topic kind of started to form in my brain. I really, advanced qualitative class was a good example of really wrestling with different angles I can take the topic, but at the end of the day, the performance story is probably the most interesting. So.
How did factor process?
Wait, I had how long to answer that question? I think what's interesting to me, this might not be answering your question, but the profound belief that they were victims of an injustice was, I think, the driving force. The way they felt they had made a misstep, but they didn't deserve the treatment they received. And so I think when you believe you're on the wrong side of injustice, I think it might slow the shame process. I also think it varied wildly for the participants if they maintained their job or if they lost their jobs. Because for those who maintained their jobs, they won. And I think you navigated the experience differently. For those who lost their jobs, I feel like that shame process was much more intense.
Catch Aaron over cake with one question. This is called the nuclear option. When we get faculty said, so it's not just getting fired. Like, so, just want to say again, what a privilege to be this. So Liddell is our speaker who comes from the academic side of the house, associate dean of academics of the Bible Institute of the Spokane branch of Azusa. And she has been interested in gender issues and leadership and organizational change for many years, part of the 2011 cohort here. And she has done some fascinating research. I think the first student in the program researched gender issues within Bible colleges. So let's welcome Wendy, and she'll have 7 minutes total to present.
Thank you for joining me here today. It's a privilege to be here and an honor to present, and I hope that the information that's presented is also encouraging to you. So you may know or not know, but U.S. colleges and universities face a variety of internal and external challenges that I believe significantly challenge the sustainability of higher education as it's traditionally been delivered. So these challenges range from increased public skepticism about the value of a college degree all the way over to the cost related to college and the implications of the student loan. So as we think about the array and the complexity of the issues that exist, really this is going to influence all of higher education, but specifically I focused in for this project on the subset of private higher education, which is U.S. Bible colleges. And we would say, or I would say, propose to you that increased research is needed to understand the forms of leadership that are most effective in leading and guiding institutions through the range of issues that will require change. Now, previous research in Bible colleges focused on leadership styles and demographics. However, little is known about how female administrative leaders in U.S. Bible colleges orchestrate organizational change. Thus, the research question. This research project was a qualitative study with a narrative approach, and I really wanted to understand the lived experiences of female leaders who orchestrated significant organizational change in U.S. So key aspects of this, I identified 3 women decided to participate. They were senior level leaders with 17 years of experience. And over an 8-month period, I collected a variety of data, what we call data, but it essentially ranged from curriculum vetoes or resumes to questionnaires to spending 2 whole days on campus interviewing everyone and anyone from family members to administrative leaders. After this, one chapter of this type of study is what's called a focused biography or a topical story. So literally I wrote the 3 biographies of 3 women focused around their stories about organizational change. And then for another chapter, I wrote the things that came out of the data. So what were common things that came out or emerged from this. Now, although many aspects exist of the study were completely fascinating, and I would love to share every single one of them. The one that I wanted to focus on today for this audience is one that focused on 2 significant relationships that women had with individuals in their lives. Now, these relationships, as a context for relationships or a brief overview of mentoring kind of forms a foundation. The concept of mentoring was formed in adult development theory. It's the idea a mentor is somebody who's a sponsor or a teacher, an advisor, typically someone who's older, has more experience and maturity. Now, the 2 functions of mentoring are usually career advancement and what we call psychosocial health, so they're concerned about your well-being. Traditionally, when this started, mentoring literature focused on a single individual, but then it moved to what's called kind of a collective developmental network. And you can see in this type of diagram, it's an egocentric constellation of formal and informal relationships that range from peers to family to sponsors. Now, as we looked at this for Amy and Jennifer, they're 2 of the participants. Their lives were influenced by 2 what I call extraordinary relationships. For Jennifer, it was her pastor. He was a father figure because her father died when she was age 8. He was a spiritual advisor. He was a leader, a professional colleague in higher education, a mentor, and what we call a sponsor. So multiple categories. For Amy, it was her father. She described him as an entrepreneur, a leader with common sense skills. He founded a highly successful family business. He was a devoted father and really a spiritual advisor. Now, based upon the unmeasured influence of these relationships in the lives of Amy, and really because I could not find a comparable type of description in the mentoring leadership literature or the leadership literature, I actually coined a new term, called visionary prophet. And Jennifer alluded several times in our discussion to this idea of the Old Testament prophet. And so that's a little bit where I picked up that term. But these men had long-term relationships with Amy and Jennifer. Lisa Jennifer, a minimum of 40 years. She met him in her early 20s, and still involved in her life. They were leaders themselves, and they were committed to Amy and Jennifer's career development, their psychosocial health, and their spiritual well-being. In addition, the interesting part of this is that these visionary prophets had a vision for their proteges and really substantive beliefs about their futures, who they would be as leaders. And in the case for both of them, these visionary prophets held this idea before they even recognized it themselves. So it's like somebody's seen something in you and saying, I see this in you. No, I don't see that. No, I see it in you. And they kept saying it over and over and over. Amy and Jennifer's visionary prophets recognized their leadership abilities and really their potential to attain significant and influential positions. But in addition to speaking about this potential early and often, these prophets invested, encouraged, worked, prayed, and propelled Amy and Jennifer forward toward these visions. They stayed by their sides until these women literally attained groundbreaking positions and influential national leadership in their spheres of influence. Amy summarized the quintessential characteristic of a visionary prophet when she said about the father, he saw me. He saw me as a successful person long before. Now, the research project in its entirety has several implications for higher education. With respect to the context of U.S. Bible college's first broadly studied careers. Specifically, this is focused on women who orchestrated organizational change, which is a very difficult task in these theologically influenced and traditionally male-dominated cultures. So the lived experiences are documented as well as other ideas. With respect to this finding, the key part of why I share it today in one part is I would hope to inspire every member of this audience to make such an investment in the life of another person. We want you to deeply consider others for the purpose of encouraging them to reach their fullest and God-given potential. I would hope that as you consider what a visionary prophet did, what the visionary prophets did in the lives of Amy and Jennifer, that you see potential in other people, and then to continue to relentlessly encourage them and invest in them until they reach that potential. In the workplace, this would look like the aspect of you wanting your proteges to go further and farther than you do, and then your actions reflect this selfless desire. My hope is that if you have not been impacted by such a visionary prophet, that you would be, but I think more importantly, that you would make the choice of a visionary prophet to invest yourself in. Now, this type of investment the last 6 years does not come without those people who invested in my life. So I'd like to take a couple moments to acknowledge. So first, I want to thank my supervisors, colleagues, and the students at the Bible Institute where I work. Truly, I serve in a learning community that has been a cloud of witnesses to me the last 6 years. In addition to my institution, I would like to thank my cohort and the faculty of the higher education department. My time in the program has been transformative, and I'm grateful to each person part of that experience. To my cohort, I want to thank them for their patience with my learning, for their examples of endurance as they pursued their own passion, for more tears and lots of laughter than I care to recount, and for being individuals that I will treasure always because of our shared journeys. I want to thank the faculty at Azusa for their dedication to their students, to their scholarship, and to the Lord. I have special memories of each of you, and you are indelibly in my heart. I want to thank you for shaping me to be the individual that I am today. I also want to thank Karen Longman and Jolyn Dalvik, my third reader. Your lives are a worthy reflection. I'm thankful for your leadership, work ethic, and your passion for women in leadership who live out in their own ways, systemically impacting the U.S. and the nation. Thank you for your investment. I also want to acknowledge my family, who's been a constant source of support throughout the last 6 years and really all 41 years of my life. I want to thank my grandparents who are not able to be here today. They're 93 years old and couldn't make the journey. But they've helped with financial gifts, they've highly valued education, and they've modeled a lifetime of hard work. To my mom and my dad, thank you for your encouragement. To my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, thank you for being a source of courage and for loving me throughout this process. From the preliminary steps of applying to this program, I have been profoundly grateful to my husband and partner, Scott. Thank you for supporting me for the last 6 years in every way possible. Emotionally, spiritually, financially, physically. Thank you for doing the laundry for the last 6 years. Thank you for your faithful encouragement, your steadfast presence, your enduring wisdom, and your love that has not ended. Finally, tonight, I would also like to acknowledge my Savior, Jesus Christ, the one true visionary prophet, priest, and king, who recognized his worth in me before I knew him, who redeemed me from darkness and brought me to light. I acknowledge that God gave me the gifts and talents that enable me to do my work, and my hope is that this work is an acceptable offering. Thank you.
Students are so poised. Okay, just we better take one question. So that's so interesting. You know, challenging. One question. I see a hand.
Again, visionary prophet concept. What did you notice in your research outside of colleges that might be
One of the things that I actually looked at, and I termed that relationship, I think it can apply to any type of sector. So in the business, the part that was interesting to me, though, it was one step beyond what the business literature calls a sponsor, which is somebody who invests their social capital into a protege for the purpose of their career development. But when I looked at this type of relationship, it was so long-term, 40 plus years of investment. And then in the case of Amy's father, it truly was an investment beyond just her mother or other relationships. So it was long-term, and it was also that they were investing and encouraging in that respect, like a sponsor. And then the spiritual aspect of it too played into it, but I really couldn't compare it to anything. There was one of my, I'll use the case of Jennifer. I'm not sure if Jennifer would have been where she was if this visionary prophet had not been in her life. It was that stark. In fact, as we looked at the research and looked at the data that was coming in, I'm like, how did she get here? Well, really, she got here because somebody believed in her and invested in her and encouraged and spent their capital to get her where she was. And completely confident, I have full faith that she will continue to shine brightly. But it was such an interesting, selfless act for somebody to choose to invest so long in somebody else until they realized kind of the dream that somebody else had lived in. Thank you.
I'm halfway there, but before we turn it over to Alex, I just want those of us in the room who know I'm the old baby woman in Texas recovering from surgery, and she wishes she was here. So if she's watching and listening, we're giving her a shout out.
All right, good evening. My name is Alex John, and I'm a professor of higher education in this department. It's wonderful to be here. We have two more presentations, and I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Min-Ho Lee, who joined us today. Yes, all the way from South Korea, which is wonderful. The world is incredibly diverse and global. And what does it mean when we become more and more global in higher education? Well, what it means is 제가 한마디로 해도 되겠죠? 여러분들 많이 계시는 이민호 박사님 축하드립니다. 특히 고생 많으셨습니다. 근데 목사님보다 사모님이 고생이 더 많은 거예요. 사모님 축하드립니다. 한국에서 오셔가지고 네, 축하드립니다. Y'all didn't know I spoke Spanish? So here's the thing. First of all, the study is about globalization and the effects. We can talk about this later about why it's English, but today's study is about English as a medium of instruction when we talk about globalization. The other is, we have an international scholar who's finished Min-Ho Lee. Dr. Lee has finished, started in 10 years ago, 2007. So just my appreciation for international scholars. If you didn't understand what I said earlier, that happens once in a while for international scholars as well. So much respect to Dr. Lee. He's going to talk about some of his work of what does it mean for globalization using English as a medium of instruction. So that means Dr. Lee.
Thank you. I'm going to speak in Chinese.
Okay. Do it.
I'm going to hope that this presentation inspires you to expand your global perspectives in languages. My topic is this one: benefits and challenges in globalization in Christian higher education, and comparative case study of English medium instruction of 2 universities from South Korea. There are many colleges and universities which have offered EMI, it is called English medium instruction, in many Asian countries. Because higher education is facing globalization on an international scale, which means universities in Korea are not an exception. So many universities in college, Christian university in Korea, and are part of the trend, which is the globalization of higher education. So in order to pursue the globalization of higher education, many schools in Korea, they have offered EMI. There are many positive outcomes in the EMI. EMI contributes to the development of student English proficiency level. and experience multicultural, experiences on their campuses, even classroom. However, according to our studies, most students who took the EMI experienced dissatisfaction with the EMI for lower quality and teaching provided in poor English and unorganized curriculum and the lack of interaction with the professors. Many college students in Korea suffer from lack of comprehension in EMI as a result of their limited English proficiency. So with the research problem, I came up with the following research question. What are the benefits and challenges in the globalization in Christian higher education at two Korean Christian universities? I selected two Christian universities in Korea. And this study has examined the many literatures, mainly focused on these actually literatures. Number one is globalization of higher education, and globalization of higher education in Korea and EMI. So in research design, a case study and multiple case and comparative case study are mainly used for this study. Let me say one thing about the comparative case study. I employ the INSA comparative case approach to Christian universities. You see here, I used INSA literal replication approach. That simply means I studied more than one Christian university and I used the sample approaches inquiry on the second Christian university as I did with the Christian university, first Christian university. So site and the participant, this one. Two Christian universities select in South Korea. And first school, it is called Truth University. It's not a true name. And then this school is the oldest Christian school in South Korea. And the American Protestant church, the missionary, he founded this school a long time ago, so more than 100 years ago. And I interviewed actually 3 faculty members, 2 females and 1 female. And the 6 students, 5 males and 1 female. And 1 internal student actually interviewed. And the second school, it is called Faith University, affiliated with the Assemblies of God denomination in South Korea. And I interviewed 3 faculty members and 6 students. Interesting part is about 4 Chinese students I interviewed in this school. Research design, data collection, it takes about 3 months of interviews, but even though it takes 10 years, my dissertation. 3 months of interview data that I collected, and then 12 campus visits I made 3 times a week, really short, yeah. And then 1 month of EMI observation and participation, 2 hours each time I visit the spender, and then analysis, the processing. I went through pattern matching and intensive data collection and multiple member checking and reviews and the verification of data. Pattern matching, there are 2 schools which implement EMI. Both are Christian universities. I want to see if the consequences of the implementation of EMI was the same or different at both universities. So during the analysis of data, I predicted the pattern after the first campus and compare and contrast for the both universities. So this is the findings. There are 3 main themes. First theme, it is called auto maximization study. Maximization of globalization and institutional competition. 2 minutes I have. Maximization of competitive advantage and maximization of the global and multicultural practice. So number 1 findings, you can see that. It means that the EMI contributes the institute to be globalized and to have more international students. And the second theme is, it means that EMI contributes the development of students' English proficiency level, which promotes them to be able to apply many different job careers. And third, the theme is, it means the students international students, they could come and then study even in Korea because of the English. So discussion, connection to the literature. Benefits, challenges, all the times. So benefits, number 1 is understanding globalization. So, because the EMI, they study, especially what the literature says, globalization and global markets have changed the landscape, not only of higher education, but also college culture. It's more, students they could, even that they invite from the overseas because of what changed culture of the college. And understanding competitive advantage, the benefits, which means a more competition, a strong competition they could have through the EMI. The last one is listening global and multicultural practice. EMI, an essential tool to recruit more international students, the professors into Korean universities. Of course, it's benefits versus the challenges. It's complication and materialism in higher education. So somehow schools being driven by materialism, even the not purpose. So that's the issue. And it's another issue is Americanization. Korea has been influenced politically, especially educationally, by America, which is good, and sometimes some parts is kind of a little bit negative. So, from the 9th century, so Korea has been politically, emotionally, economically, so especially education influenced by America. So, significance. Hold on, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. Okay. So, so let me finish up the limitation quickly. Small size, and then history, and the two schools quite different EMI history, and the different personal backgrounds, interviews. So that's why the feedback is quite different. And implication for practice. So, smaller class size. We recommend small size because of the language abilities. More small size, they could have more interaction with the professors. And then the more foreign teachers who know the EMI cultures, they're more suitable to teach them. And then last one, develop more curriculum and then organize the EMI system. So for the research, these are my further research. So you can see that. All right. My acknowledgement takes longer than maybe my presentation. I've been waiting for this one. I remember attending an almost identical ceremony as of today, some 10 years ago. One of the doctoral candidates for presenting his dissertation, he completed in 10 long years. While listening to presentation, I spoke to myself, how could he take 10 long years to present this dissertation? I'll never be like him. That's today I'm standing here presenting my dissertation, which took me 10 long years to complete this dissertation. Indeed, it was 10 long years of learning, humility, and patience. I'd like to take this opportunity to convey my sincerest gratitude to all my benefactors, without those whose help and support I could not have completed this dissertation. First, I express my sincere gratitude to my parents. Yes, my parents. My father was supposed to be here today, but back pain, couldn't make it. Thank you. My mom is supporting me. More than 20 years, I could study here as an international student. It's not easy financially, emotionally, and spiritually. Thank you so much. And then my younger sister, all the time, she's been supporting the complete dissertation. And then my parents-in-law, Mr. Song Kim and Mrs. Thank you for their prayers. And my wife, of course, she never ever said divorce. So thank you for her patience and support. My children, Lois and Azusa, hopefully I could be their model. They could follow and more study. So, and then of course, I wish thank you, especially to Dr. Alexander John, my dissertation committee chair, because his continuing academic spiritual support and encouragement until the completion of the dissertation. He is the mainly responsible for making me who I am today, academically and spiritually. Thank you. And thank you also Dr. Young Kim, who as a dissertation committee member offered me an invaluable advice to examine Korean society and the universities objectively undertake my research. I also like to thank you, Dr. Francis Wu, who another dissertation committee member who enabled me to thoroughly study the globalization and internalization of higher education. I also convey my gratitude to the faculty of Doctor in the Higher Education Program at Azusa State University, whose guidance and support have made my transition from theology to higher education. It was a big change, actually. And then realized my potential as a Christian educator. I genuinely thank Dr. Lori Schreiner for teaching me that Christian educators must possess academic expertise as well as perspectives. My special thanks also go to Dr. Karen Longman, who rendered me exceptional assistance and opportunities since I undertook the doctoral studies. Also, thank you for Dr. Anina Hank for her instruction and organizational culture and exceptional leadership in higher education. I also thank Dr. Eileen, whose formation and inspiration enabled me to successfully complete my doctoral studies. And also thank Dr. John Park, and Mrs. Park, my mentors, esteemed teachers, for treating me like a family for 20 years. Thank you very much. I also thank Dr. David Bixby, whom I respect as an excellent leader, through his tireless support and love, and I have completed this dissertation. And I also thank my esteemed friend, Mary Rams, Ms. Mary Rams, whose love and care sustained me to continue my study in the States as a foreign student and realize my goal. And then my genuine thanks go to the John family, who through their Christian love and support strengthened my academic motivation and faith, helped me adjust to the new life in the States 20 years ago, away from my parents and the family. Words cannot express how much I love them. I wish also thank my dear friend Kevin Lee here. I'm grateful to God for special gifts which with God's has endowed him. Last one, I ascribe my utmost gratitude to my God, who has created and blessed me to confess upon the completion of this dissertation. By the grace of God, I am what I am. 1 Corinthians. I promise to use my doctoral degree for the glory of God and the expansion of gospel. Christ, I will dedicate my life for the purpose alone. My God, I love you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have time for one question. Yes.
So you said in your results that you thought that you have appropriate teachers for EMI study.
Yes.
What would you consider?
Is appropriate means related with cultures and also the needs of students, what they gain from through the EMI. Because so a lot of the colleges in Korea, they hire actually Korean speakers. They have them to speak, run, and teach, instruct the EMI courses, which is not completely related with the students' their needs, academic needs. So foreign teachers, more they're related with the English medium instructor, which means the curriculum. They are able to design their culture, their curriculum, which a lot of students get engaged in and they learn more dynamically, so effectively. That's why I think I recommend even the interview, all the interview recommend actually it would be better to hire or have their foreign teachers, foreigner actually run the instruct the EMI courses.
Good. Congratulations. Well, we have one last presenter. We saved the best for last.
Yes, you did.
Dr. Kitty Lopez. She works at Fresno State University, coordinator for Renaissance Scholars Program. And this is one of those moments when you think about higher education. Justice in higher education is one thing. Higher education as a form of justice is another way of looking at it. Kizzy has devoted her life to educational justice. And it is an honor to have worked with you, 2009 cohort. And some of my fondest memories is one of my original research teams. Kizzy came out, we were in Cambodia and Korea, and just so many memories. I don't have time. I don't think Facebook existed then, maybe. I don't know, but you don't have the pictures, but a wonderful experience. And I'm so, so happy for you, Kizzy. You ready to do this? Yes. All right, Dr. Kizzy Lopez.
Just a reminder what happens in Korea stays. Good evening, my name is Kizzy Lopez, and it's my sincere pleasure to be here with all of you this evening. I will keep it short because I know we are ready for the next thing, but I just wanted to say briefly, an important scripture to me that guides me personally and in my professional work is Isaiah 1:17. Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of the orphans, fight for the rights of the widow. Orphan in the context of the United States is foster care. It's the student or young person who does not have the emotional, physical, or financial support of their parent, either temporarily or long-term. So the issue that I'm addressing today is around foster youth in higher ed. To make the point clear about the significance of this problem, I'd like all of you to stand. I need if you're left-hand side, the left-hand side of the room to please sit down. So that you are aware, only 50% of foster youth graduate with a high school diploma. Will the first 3 rows remain standing and the rest of you sit? Of the 50% that earn a high school diploma, only 10 to 20% will go on to some type of post-secondary education. Will the third and second row please sit down? If you look around the room, only 3 to 11% of young people who experience foster care will earn a college degree. Please have a seat. If that's not a problem, I don't know what is. Because we are all here because education has transformed our lives personally and economically. And so we need to make sure that these students have the same opportunity. My hope is to bring the invisible to be visible. We often don't think about this group of students. So there's very little known in higher education about the factors that impact foster youth's ability to persist in college. And the few studies that do exist primarily focus on foster youth experience, their own personal stories, which is critical. But I'm also a practitioner doing this work and love this population. I thought it's really important to hear the voice of those who love the students and do this work and see what their challenges and barriers are. And so my question is, what are the factors that hinder and support the retention of college-going foster youth in California and Central Valley? There is no study, to my knowledge, that's examined this particular region. My research design is a qualitative methodology. I utilize a policy-oriented approach, borrowing from the multiple case study approach. My data collection included individual interviews, document collection and analysis, and informal observations. I conducted 7 individual interviews that lasted 1.5 to 2 hours. I had the opportunity to visit 4 campuses. I spent 2 days at one campus and a full day at the other campuses. My analysis is based, my initial categories were based on my research question. What are the supports and what are the hindrances? Within supports, there were 2 things that emerged: supportive relationships. So for people in my role who are practitioners, the relationship with other community members on the campus and community members within the local region was very important, but also the relationship that they had with students was a critical aspect to students being retained. There are statewide legislative policies that were really helpful both to the students and for the practitioners to advocate for the students to help them stay retained. Although there are policies in place, there's still a lot of challenges. Imagine being 18 years old and you're in college and you don't have a place to stay. It's a reality for 25 to 40% of young people who are leaving the foster care system and trying to make a way for themselves. Even if there is housing on campus, during school breaks, there are logistical issues that I talk about in much deeper ways in my dissertation. access to mental health. These students have experienced a lot of trauma in their young life, and so there's a lack of resources to get adequate mental health. And then last, there's insufficient funding. Many of the people who do this work do it out of goodwill. And so they are doing this work, but underfunded, under-resourced. This graph just gives kind of a quick overview of the 4 institutions and the different areas of support for them and the different areas of hindrances. You'll see relationship was key to student success. And there's a quote that I really like. It says, "We are all one caring adult away from success." By John Sheets. The finding that I wanted to focus in on because of the limitation of time is lack of funding. It's a real practical finding. Practitioners were saying that I didn't even have money to make these brochures, and that's basic. I mean, really, some practitioners were digging out in their own pockets to make sure that students had food and the basic things that they needed. Another quote that stood out to me is, "That is one of the things that I find most challenging. Am I really serving my students' needs to the best of my ability if I don't have time? That's a barrier." This particular practitioner had 5% and three different types of programs that she was overseeing. And only 5% of her time was allocated to helping foster youth, which means she had to fundraise, manage data. It's not realistic. So with that, these recommendations are specific to the finding. Well, let me say this before I get excited. The state should dedicate funding for foster youth support programs in higher ed. Institutions should reevaluate and increase directors and coordinators' percentage of time allocated so that they can serve their foster youth students well. Campuses should allocate stable institutional funding for foster youth programs while they're waiting for states to do their job, and also if states do fund these programs, there's still going to be a need for institutional commitment. Last, directors and coordinators in the Central Valley should meet regularly within a community of practice to share resources, best practices, and develop innovative solutions to support college-going foster youth. So last, I would say that there's a moral, ethical, and spiritual commitment to serving this population. Public institutions in California have stepped up. Those of you who work at the CCCU, I would encourage you from a spiritual standpoint and a moral standpoint, as a believer, to step up to the plate and serve foster youth on your campuses. So my thank yous. Okay. I didn't write a script because it's not my way. I can't write a script. Okay. So the first thing I have to say is thanks be to God. If you knew my story, I shouldn't be here today. I should have been dead and gone. But God, that's all I gotta say. Sometimes less is more, but God. To my committee, thank you for your unwavering support and flexibility. I won't get into all the details, but it's a story to tell. Thank you, Dr. Collins, and my committee member for Fresno State, Dr. Juan Carlos Gonzalez, for being one of the most flexible committees. I think that goes down to the books, as we say. Dr. Jen, there's too many stories to tell, but I love this brother right here. He went from being an advisor to a mentor and a friend. And I literally could not have gotten through this program without him. He pulled me back from a proverbial ledge when I was going to jump. And I didn't know if I could get through this program. And he cried with me and prayed with me and said, I will see you through this if you decide to stay. So thank you. Thank you. And just, he's the realest brother you ever want to meet. That's all I'm saying. That's a compliment. To my mom, who's here in the audience, and my dad, may he rest in peace. Thank you for teaching me to pray. Thank you for teaching me the value of education. To my sisters, I have two sisters, and my little sister, We helped take care of her when things were rough, and she's my first baby girl, and I love her. She couldn't be here today. And to my twin sister, I can't say too much. From the womb to the tomb, that's her saying. She's just always with me, and I just love that they're so unimpressed with me. And I love that. Like, I could just be more regular. That is a gift. To my Renaissance scholars, those are my students that I just love and cherish so much. Loving you has healed me. And to my circle of power, I have to just call you guys out really quick. Maribel, Morgan, Kenyon, where else? Oscar, Marla, Lisa, Marcella, Sarah, they're all here. I mean, I'm talking about healing and love. Lisa has rubbed ointment on my neck when it was stiff from dissertation writing. If that's not love, I don't know what is. My sister friends over here brought me food and cried with me. And you all have heard a million stories. Just thank you just for loving me and seeing me through this process. And Sarah, thank you for opening your home with your family and just letting me live with you while I'm going through this process. To my children, oh my goodness. They've known more of their life with APU than without it. What does that tell you? And so thank you for your involuntary sacrifice. I will not miss another basketball game. I will not miss another, like, go get your nails done, nothing. We're not missing anything anymore. Just thank you. I hope that I'm a role model to you and you see what this was all for. And to my husband, if you could please stand. I'm like, well, you're not gonna say to sit down. Just, I honor you. I love you so much. You've given everything. In my heartbeat, I love you. We did this day. We did it.
You ready to get hooded? Yes. Y'all ready to get hooded? Yes. Thank you all very much. Let's exit quickly and head on up and let's see our dear beloved friends get hooded, shall we?